Okay, welcome to another Saturday sermon. I'm excited to introduce Dawn here. So Dawn is going to be talking about emotional processing as a pathway to the truth of who we are. So we're really excited to bring her on. Dawn is a vitalistic chiropractor, which I'm really interested to know what that means to her, and I'm sure she'll tell us. And she is a women's health specialist who is a seasoned practitioner in trauma release and emotional transformation using vitalistic healing modalities such as integrative chiropractic, craniosacral therapy, herbs, functional medicine, and more. Dawn is a mother to a beautiful and creative 9-year-old daughter, and she is devoted to her spiritual path and to ensure women, specifically mothers, get the care they need. So, welcome, Dawn. Thank you so much for providing our Saturday sermon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on this morning. This is exciting. So yeah, what I'll just start by your question. What is vitalistic chiropractic? So pretty much vitalism is all about how the body has the intelligence, its innate ability to heal itself. And so that's really what vitalism is about. And so chiropractic is a way of removing anything that may be hindering its ability to heal itself. So that's the whole point of vitalistic chiropractic. It's really seeing us for who we truly are, which we are these incredible beings with so much ability to heal, to transform, all of the above. And so it's a very powerful practice. It's about a very powerful form of connecting with a human being and connecting with their vitality and their abilities in its totality. So that's pretty much what vitalistic chiropractic is. My name is Dawn. So just wanted to preface that. My name is Dawn, and my whole path, I guess you could say, has been about emotions. I've been a very emotionally in tuned individual since a little girl. Very intuitive as well. I would feel things and then I would just erupt in all these in really intense sensations called emotions going through my body. And this was back in 84 when I was born. And so emotional awareness and intelligence was not really a thing at all. And it was more about like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with this child? Is she bipolar? Is something wrong with her? And then there was the complete, oh, she's just something's wrong with her. And then we'll go that way, just complete rejection of what was going on. And that's such a perfect picture and insight and mirror into what a lot of us do still, and that is reject who we truly are, what our true experience really is, and especially emotions, because there's so much stigma around them and so many ideas or so many opinions and things like that that are surrounded around emotions. And so my whole life has been navigating myself through this pathway of really intense emotions. And like, how in the world do you do that when there's not really a framework until I fell into one? So coming back more about myself is spirituality has, since I was a little girl, has always been something that I'm just drawn to. And, it's funny to say that because it's just what it's really saying is I was always drawn to the truth of who I am. And that's really what spirituality is. It's the pathway back home to ourselves. And, and, but, in the seeking, right? It's like the seeking phase. You learn everything in the world to try to like find this, and you don't actually understand yet that you're just trying to find yourself, that you're trying to come back home. But it's this outward seeking of truth. And so in that process, I have taken vows into a lineage called Vajrayana Buddhism. It is a tantric stream of Buddhism. And I learned all about the Dakini mandala. And what that is it is embodiment of the liberations of these emotions, essentially. And so this was probably the greatest gift that I could have been given in this lifetime because of my dosha, because of how I orient to the world. And what it is, it's a pathway through emotions to the truth of who we are, which is our liberated state. And so through all the distortions that we experience, there is a pathway that takes us right to the liberation. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today, essentially. I won't be talking about the mandala because that is a very sacred piece of information, so to speak, or sacred practice. And that is not my path to teach that. However, I hope to bring some confidence, some trust, and faith in our emotional paths, even whenever they feel so intense that we can't even see straight. And some love and encouragement for everybody to know that that is a place to accept and to allow. And there is magic through that that takes us back home to ourselves. So, yeah, so that's what I will be talking about today. I wrote some notes, so excuse my eyes for looking around a little bit and my water just falling. That's how it goes in real life. So pretty much that's the rundown of myself of what we will be talking about. But I first want to start off with, you know, what is emotional processing? Like, what are these terms? And I'll first start off with emotions. Emotions are literally energy in motion. Whenever we consciously drop the story, or sometimes we're not even aware of the story surrounding an emotional process, we can just sit with and feel the emotion, which is energy in motion, which is simply physical sensation that is running through our body from start to finish. So whenever we don't attach and hold on, right, and fight for our life to hold on to this story like it's God, and we let the emotion, we let the sensation run all the way through, we can literally feel it from start to finish. And I think most emotions run just for like within 30 seconds if we actually let it run all the way through without stopping them. And when we hold on to the story and we loop, we are actually stopping it in its tracks, and it's kind of just like vibrating. And this is what starts to rev up our engine. This is what starts to build that potential energy within us. And then we end up like exploding or imploding or something, a big something happens. But if we are to just remove that like strong hold on it, then we can let it run through. And so what happens, the processing part, is literally the movement of the sensation throughout our system. And the beautiful part that happens after that is clarity. We get insights. We feel other sensations or other emotions, which are more our liberated state, which are the truth of who we are, which is passion, joy, inspiration, inspired action, pristine awareness, unconditional love. And so this is the benefit of the processing part, and that is essentially what processing is. It's simply allowing allowing the sensation to run through from start to finish. And so I like to think of it like this, emotions are like waves in the ocean, and we can choose to be the surfer, right? We can choose to be the one that rides the waves from start to finish. And then we think about, what happens whenever we Yeah, I like to think of emotions as waves in the ocean, and we have a choice to ride them or to block them. And I think all have experienced that whenever we do block the flow of energy, it doesn't create great results. And so that's really prefacing, why we want to allow these emotions to run through. And another piece that I find is really important is, with societal pressures to look outward and to compare, and like the next big screen TV is going to be your answer for your happiness. Like, no. What that's really telling us is it's rejecting our human experience in the sense of rejecting our physical and emotional and mental experience in this life, and building that and building the capacity to be with that. Whenever we distract ourselves with things that are telling us that they're going to bring happiness, that are on the outside, it's distracting us actually away from what's here. And so if we think about it in like a macro scale, we're, at least here in the West, we're taught to reject like our natural rhythm, our natural states, and to turn outward to something different. And with that being said, that really kind of brings us back to teach us that on the micro scale, whenever we're rejecting our experience, which means rejecting emotions and those sorts of things, we're rejecting our humanity, our human experience. And we're here for a reason. We're not here to distract ourselves, although that is a path. Distortion is a pathway in and of itself, but that's another day and another talk. But it's our humanity is the messiness. And if we can ride that wave of the messy, then we actually start to build this beautiful reverence for life. We start to view this beautiful reverence and appreciation and deep love for the human experience. And we stop rejecting what we're experiencing. And it's in those places of when we truly allow what is present right in front of us, that's whenever we're home in ourselves. And it's whenever we move through that, that's whenever we arrive back home to the truth of who we are. So those are pretty much, like the emotional processing, why we want to process, what processing actually is, and to understand that emotions are not our enemies; they're actually our allies to something deeper for ourselves and to true fulfillment. So another piece is I'd like to speak about, why emotional suppression, I guess you could say, blocks authenticity. And we can use the term authenticity congruently with the truth of who we are. And so we'll look at it like this. So there's these emotions that are in our system, regardless of where they came from. I mean, it could have been when we were a toddler and we wanted chocolate ice cream and we were given chocolate ice cream, but in the wrong cone, and that created something in our system that we're still holding on to 30 days later or 30 years later. Or it could be something massive. It could be abuse, all kinds of experiences, loss. But we're taught, and rightly so, emotions can feel very uncomfortable and scary in our body, especially whenever we feel very big ones. But what happens is that we start stuffing, we start putting them in other places it actually ends up, and there's research around this, emotions, stored experiences that we haven't processed all the way through, it shifts our physiology, and that's our physicality. So it can cause disease. It can cause, I mean, I'm a chiropractor, and I see a lot of people come into practice, their initial reason for coming into my practice is neck pain, back pain. All of a sudden I turned and I, grabbed something, and then all my muscles got really tight and I can't move, all these things, right? So I'm working with the person. Oh, usually on the first session, an emotional release happens and then like the pain goes away. And so I literally see this every single day in practice. And it's true. Our stored emotions, stored experiences, things that we're not facing in ourselves shifts our physiology. It changes our mind. It changes the way that we think. It creates distortion in our system. And so what does distortion look like? That looks like jealousy. That looks like insecurities. It looks like evasiveness, irritability, lack of confidence. It could be, I'm trying to think, there's so many, anxiety, depression is a huge one, rage. And so we start to understand through doing this time and time again, and everyone can do this, everyone can do it for themselves, kind of like a science experience or a science experiment is, every time you feel rage, maybe you allow that feeling a little bit more. I know for myself, there's a natural tendency for me to just like brace whenever that emotion comes through because it is so big and so powerful. But whenever I'm feeling that, when I'm actually allowing it to come through, I'll allow it to come through little bits and pieces, and then I'll actually get insight into maybe what that's from. Not to hold on to it, but just to be like, oh, that was there. That was from that. And then things start to shift in my own body. My stomach stops hurting. My neck or my shoulders start to relax. I can breathe deeper, just as examples. But what happens is that with the distortions that are caused by stored emotions, stored experiences, traumas that we're not ready to face because we're afraid of what the pain may do. And it's taking a little side note, it's not necessarily that we're afraid of the pain itself, but we're most usually afraid of what the pain will do. And that is destroying us. That is annihilating us. It's literally on that scope. So if you think of it as like this, like each range of emotions is linked to this fear of like a natural disaster of happening, being drowned, like the wave of emotions, the wave of rage that comes through. You feel like you're going to die. And that's really what the fear is actually linked to. If that fear wasn't there, I can pretty much so trust that everyone would be more willing to feel these emotions that comes on through. So with that being said, what I was talking about doing an experiment is, there's certain links with certain emotions. Whenever we allow them to come through their liberated state, we start to see associations with a liberated state versus the distorted state. So say rage is a distorted state, and then there's a liberated state, which may be stillness, which is usually like a pretty opposite thing. So it's pretty beautiful to see. But the reason why I bring that up is if we gain more stillness, after moving through a bit of rage, well, what's happening whenever we aren't moving through that rage? What's happening to our system? We have to contort. Our whole system starts to contort in a way to hold all this. And if we remember, emotions are literally energy in motion. And so you think about that, it's like trying to block a little child from running, from expressing themselves. We're literally holding on so tight inside with all these like potential energies that are trying to be kinetic, that are trying to move. That's their purpose, is to move. And we're just like putting this lid on this pressure cooker within us. And our whole systems are like shifting and moving to try to like hold all this in. And so if you think about it, just we'll use the rage example and stillness. Um, what's probably going to be created from that? Well, probably disconnection, distraction, because we can't sit still, but we can't allow it to move through all the way. Anxiety, these are things that start to arise whenever we're not able to be with what's actually there in front of us. And so, so do a little experiment. You can start to see over time associations with certain things, and you'll start to see the link between, oh, this is why I've felt overwhelmed, because I wasn't facing what was right in front of me. And what's the benefit of that, which is what we'll talk about next. And so I'm just going to look at my notes to see if I'm missing anything with that section. No, yeah. So what we will talk about next then is the benefits, kind of like what I'm talking about, like the liberated states. And so whenever we move through some of these emotions, and I'll explain like a process that I do for that. But and what I mean by running through is just allowing. So whenever we allow these emotions to come through, we gain these liberated states. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this is like passion. This is inspired action. This is clarity, pristine awareness. And what I mean by that is it's not just clarity. It's you're seeing the layers of realms of what a situation is presenting. You're seeing the hidden things. You're seeing things behind the veil, so to speak. And it can feel very esoteric and all that, but it's true pristine awareness to reality. And it's actually what it really is we're piercing through the layers of delusion and illusion into what's really and truthfully there right in front of us, that we have created all these blocks from seeing. So it's really incredible whenever you get that precision of sight, of true sight, and what that opens up for us. And that brings in this level of truth that opens up our heart into unconditional love. It's truly incredible. And this is the benefit of feeling, of embracing our humanity and embracing these emotions. So more liberations that we may feel, like I talked about, stillness is a huge one. Generosity, contentment, enoughness. That's a huge one. Worthiness. I think the majority of the population, probably like over 99%, deals with not feeling like they're enough, not feeling like they're worthy enough. And whenever we are not facing these emotions within us, we end up creating these maladaptive coping strategies. And I already talked about what happens in our physicality, but also in our life. We start, like people cheat on their partners, people, because they're afraid. It's actually fear, of not being enough. And so that's projected. We project, we blame, We do all these weird things. Like if someone was really watching from an objective view, they would think humans are just crazy and and wild because of all the ways that we evade what is actually right inside of us and what we're in feeling and our insecurities. And so we end up creating all these maladaptive coping strategies that are not of benefit, that end up creating harm to ourselves, to others, and that are just like simply silly. And I say that with compassion for myself too, and for everyone, because it's not as easy as we would hope it would be. Um, but whenever we truly just allow ourselves to be with what is and feel that, which can be really big, then we let go of those maladaptive coping strategies, which confuse us, which confuse our identities. And we create identities around these coping strategies. And once we start cutting through those, we realize that that's not who we are. And then we can start facing, oh, this is really who I am. And that comes with these liberated states and these liberated qualities. But that's only when we face this and we face what we're actually feeling and experiencing in the moment. So that brings me to, the practical tools of how to actually face an emotion and to face reality of what is in front of us. So I'll say something else too in a little bit. I'll say this first actually. Number one is allow. So allowing what is there, allowing our messiness. And again, I said this earlier. Our messiness is so beautiful. Like that vulnerability is the most beautiful thing ever. In practice, as I said, there's a lot of people who come in and a lot of emotions are moved in practice. And I just find it so beautiful. And I feel like it's such a gift to get to witness people in their messiness. And what I mean by messiness is their vulnerability, not the coping strategies, right? I mean, although there's an endearment to that too when I have that objective view. But there is this true beauty. And I know it's incredible whenever people are really owning and opening up and being vulnerable and expressing that part of themselves to grow and to heal and to move forward. But it requires the allowing. And so a lot of the work that I do, it's through the body, as I already said about how the physicality shifts. But it's that moment. It's like this tipping point. One of my teachers used to call it the tipping point. It's like it's reached its max potential energy, and now it has to move into kinetic. It has to start to move. And so we reach those places, and that's the allowing part. That is the allowing of the sensation to run all the way through and to really consciously drop the story, although the mind will start to swirl and it will probably start to bring in insights, as the emotion is moving, which is fine. But the trick is to not to hold on and to attach so much like it's an identity, like it is life or death if I don't hold on to this. And so again, allowing the sensation to run through. And ways to work with that is, so I've done like a 10-day sit meditation for Vipassana. I've done other meditations, trainings and all that. But a great way to do it, as in taught in Vipassana, is is to experience sensation, is to get used to experiencing sensation. And so what they do is they go through parts of the body and you simply just tune in and allow and feel what is present in your body. And it's a way for us to get immune to, essentially, to feeling, so that we can allow these things to run through, to heal and transform, so that we can clear the distortions, to come back to the truth of who we are. But the biggest thing is to allow. So again, you can start off by simply practicing on sensations on your arm for 10 minutes or for 5 minutes. But you'll start to notice, then you'll start to bring your awareness deeper into yourself. And say you start to feel like you're gonna cry, literally tune into the sensation of the teardrops welling up in your eyes and then starting to fall. Like, that's a piece of it, right? And then you'll start to feel this like wave of and spiraling motion, as an example, running through like the torso, up through the heart, up through the throat. And you're literally feeling this all the way through. And it's quite invigorating whenever we only are focused and present with the sensation that's running all the way through. And that is the act of allowing. I can kind of attribute it to, whenever you're on a ride, we'll say like going up, right? We're going up on the roller coaster. It's the up part. So this is the building up. This is the potential energy. And you know what's at the top. You know that you're probably going to be screaming. You might be crying. You might be, you might pass out. You might just totally evade the whole process. And so we're going up, we're at the top, and it's literally that very top part. And you have a choice. You have a choice to either evade or to experience the sensation of falling, of riding on this crazy ass roller coaster and whatever that's going to bring. But you have that choice. And so this is the choice, is you can embrace it. You can embrace what arises, right? Or you can evade. But if you evade, you're going to have to come back to it again. So you might as well just do it now. So that's what I liken the roller coaster ride of the emotion. And it, again, can be quite invigorating, as roller coasters can be, right? You're terrified for your life. And at the same time, you're like laughing because you're having so much fun. And it can be like that. So that's the big thing, is allow yourself to feel it. The next part I would say is, that's pretty much like the totality of it, but for the insight starts to arise after that. And sometimes the insight starts whenever your mind is observing the fact that you're in a liberated state, such as stillness or awareness, like pristine awareness or clarity, or all of a sudden you feel joy. Like grief is a big one, holding on to grief and then allowing that to come all the way up and through, and you start to feel joyful again. You start to feel that sense of like childlike curiosity and wonder again. So insights will start to come through, maybe insights into what that emotion was actually linked to. Maybe it's linked to an experience when you were a child. And I'll talk about some case studies or some examples towards the end as well. But I'll just give one right now as an example. Is someone's in my practice and she was moving through some emotions like fully, and an insight came through that, oh, that was from the birth of her first child. And then all this emotion came through of how grateful, like all this gratitude for the birthing process, for their child, for life. And just before, it was this deep, deep grief from something very big that recently happened, a big loss. And so that's how fast this happens. And that's truly our our real state, our the truth of who we are is that unconditional love. It's that passion in life and equanimity piece. But it was so beautiful to see. But that's an example of what happens. And so that's where like insights will start to come in. A great thing to do, like after emotions are coming through or during the process, is get out a pen and paper. You're not judging what you're writing, but you're just writing and you're seeing what happens. A lot of times it'll actually influence more movement of the emotion to come through. And then you'll start to see, where these things were lining up in your life. And it'll just provide you with more information about yourself. And, also just to bring a piece of, whenever we're not facing our real emotions and then we start to see how we've kind of covered up parts of ourselves because we're trying to cope into this box of all this potential energy that's vibrating at different vibrations, right? Like all these stored emotions. We realize that we have covered up layers of who we are. We've covered up maybe past memories that helped shape who we are. And so this is a great way to kind of take the lid off and to start to draw all that out so that we can see more parts of ourselves. Maybe we've forgotten parts of who we are. And as we release these emotions out into the wild, right? Releasing these energies back into motion, then we end up like uncovering parts of ourselves that we have forgotten about. And it can be quite an emotional coming home and end up filling with so much love and devotion for ourselves. And then we're able to walk through the world in that way as well, which is beautiful. And then the other piece in all of this is that the more and more we work with ourselves, the more we're able to see in others. And the more that we work with ourselves and the more we allow these emotions to come through, the more we become a safe space for others because we've already done it. And energetically, there's a match there because there's a need there for safety. And we become safety for people because we've become that for ourselves. So, and that goes with the piece of with the emotional processing, actually doing the act is releasing judgment for what it is, releasing judgment for the stories that we're playing in our head, releasing judgment of how we have coped all these years, releasing judgment from ourselves, having self-compassion and having compassion for the fact that we are human. And I know the movies want to dictate us as superheroes, and which we are, but we're only superheroes if we embrace the totality of who we are. And that requires us to face what we feel. And it's super important, as I've been explaining. And also releasing judgment allows the processing of emotions to happen with more ease as well. And it's a process, if you're very used to rejecting. And I say this for everyone, I think women get the story of you're so emotional, so we try to hold back in some way. And then you have, males who are told like you can't be emotional because you have to be a man, that whole run out story. Like, no, we're all human actually. And we all have emotions. We all experience them. And we end up being more centered in ourselves. We end up responding to life rather than reacting. And we are more appropriate in our life whenever we actually do face what is there. So the whole societal pressures is just wrong because it creates disconnection. It's creating all these distortions in the world, which we can totally see on a macro scale. Um, so, and one more piece is this isn't all also just being nuanced with our intention and with our words is we're not doing all this to like fix anything about ourselves. There's actually nothing wrong with ourselves. I think what is wrong, or the only thing that has been wrong, is that we haven't been supported in embracing ourselves and all of its glory and all of its colors. And I think that's the part that, as a human, in humanity, where we've gone wrong a bit, is the rejection of who we are and our experience. And so there's nothing to fix here. There's simply to allow so that we can embrace more. So I just want to make sure that that is something that is in there because that's very important. And that I think is in line with the judgment piece as well. So we just drop that story and we allow, well, shit, I'm feeling rage right now. And okay, this is what I'm feeling. And to allow that and to be with that. I have a 9-year-old daughter and we joke around a lot. And I'll look at her and I'm feeling, say, a lot of irritation because we're in a small space and she chews so loudly. And she's like smacking her lips and I'm sitting there like trying to focus on something and all I can hear is her smacking her lips, right? And this like mama rage starts to like feed into my soul, it feels like. And I'm sitting there and I look at her, I just make this like crazy face and then we both start laughing at each other. And I'm like, or I'll just go like, oh my God, and she'll look at me and we both laugh because we allow that, I feel rage right now because you're chewing super loud. And I'm trying to focus. And so there's a way to orient to these emotions and to our humanity. There's a way to orient to it in a way that is fun and playful and silly. And it doesn't have to be this like arduous journey all the freaking time because that's exhausting. And that's not what we're here for. We're here for beauty. So anyways, so just a few case studies from practice. I did give that one. And even from myself, a big one is I've dealt with depression, just full disclosure. I dealt with depression for a long time and I suppressed my emotions for a very long time. And that's where the depression came in. I suppressed who I was for a very long time, which is part of the depression. And it wasn't until I started facing like this rage and depression would kind of go hand in hand with each other, facing and feeling these things, feeling how much I hated myself because I wasn't being authentic, but I didn't know how to be authentic because I had suppressed my authenticity. And so I was like, who is that? What is that? And so it wasn't until I started feeling, actually going into the sensation of depression, going into the sensation of rage, like I would seek it out. I would seek out these sensations and I would feel them. It wasn't until then that I started to feel more stillness in my system, that I started to feel or started to see very clearly, which really helps in practice, which really helps in relationships, which really helps in ourselves, because then I could start to see where my motivations were lying, when I would act in certain ways or say certain things. Um, and and I started to feel more joy in my life, where for a long time there was a good stint where I was not feeling joy. But it wasn't until that I was facing these emotions that that's when I would actually feel more joy, feel inspired action, feel like I could truly serve, like there was capacity to serve and to be who I truly was. I've had people in practice. So someone came in for really sharp back pain, and I was just feeling around doing what I do in practice, and um, I started asking the person questions of, I'm getting this sense because I'm very kinesthetic. I'm getting the sense of grief, but there's something here. It feels like betrayal, like there's an anger, a really deep hurt. And then she starts telling me what's been going on. And then she starts to cry. And within like a minute, she literally said, "Oh my gosh, like I don't feel any pain." And this was someone who came in with acute pain in their back. And then so she's talking about it, the pain's going away, the emotions are running. And then next time I see her, um, she tells me how she responded to the situation, and it just changed her whole world in such a beautiful way. And so this just goes to show you, whenever we feel what is present in us, right? When we don't reject it, when we don't run from it, but when we embrace it, when we feel it, things change. Our lives start to change. The pain goes away. And the bigger picture to all this is, as I said, I've taken vows in this lineage. And Buddhism, like really all the self-actualization streams of spirituality and of teachings, it's all about alleviating suffering. We are in suffering whenever we are holding on and not allowing life to be what it is. We are in suffering whenever we are in these maladaptive coping strategies, when we are in these distorted states. This is suffering because it's not actually the truth of who we are. The truth of who we are our liberated states. But we are in this human experience that are dealing with distortions to an nth degree. And so it requires us to be present with what is right in front of us. But that means that we have to actually face and feel what is arising within us to be with what is on right in front of us. And so the bigger picture in all this, and this is really why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, not only from on myself, but with other people. And I say with because they're doing everything. I'm just that container in that moment because I've done it for myself. Um, but the whole purpose behind all of it is to alleviate suffering in the world. And again, it's all about alleviating that suffering so that we can be with the truth of who we are. And whenever we are in that state, there is no suffering. We aren't causing harm to other people. We aren't causing harm to the earth. We are living more naturally with the earth's rhythms. We have more compassion. We are inspired. We have inspired action. We take inspired action, right? We create beautiful things. Creation is a liberated state. We are here to create. And we're here to connect. And this is truly the way to do it. And we're able to do that whenever we alleviate our own suffering, which means, once again, that we have to face ourselves and face the experience that is right in front of us. And so I will just say one more little piece to the processing process is It doesn't have to happen all at once. And here's another nuanced thing is that sometimes it is too big for our nervous system to embrace all at once. Um, we see this in kids. Sometimes it's like when a child is having a tantrum, so to speak, but there's this line where it's actually too overwhelming for the system, and that's when it needs to stop versus that zone of expression of authentic expression with what they're going through in the moment. um and so just knowing that line within ourselves, um so that we see that, okay, I may need to just do little bits and pieces because this experience is so big. Like say a sudden loss as an example. And that's why grief, a lot of times it goes through all these processes because it's just so big for our nervous system to handle all at once that it has to be dealt in pieces. And to honor that, and again, going with the no judgment is to truly honor that process within ourselves. And through that process, there's an unraveling and unwinding and an uncovering of the distortions of the suffering. And so that it takes us back to the truth of who we are. And that's what alleviates suffering in the world. And that's what alleviates suffering in us and creates a happy life. So, a fulfilling life. So yeah, that I think that touches everything that I want to talk about in a nutshell. I don't know if we do questions here or anything, but I'm happy to be a sounding board for anything if anyone wants to say anything. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this was perfect. And we can definitely open it up for questions for a few minutes. I just want to say I think this is a great topic for the holiday season, and I really appreciate you giving it
Yeah.
during this time when we do often, whether we want to or not, there's a lot of emotions that come up around this time. And I think you've given us some very specific ways that we can experience it differently this year than maybe we
Well,
have in the past.
thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm driving, so I'm going to stay off screen. But it's just really beautiful to hear everything that you said because I do very similar work with my clients. I'm an orthopedic body worker. I specialize in myofascial work, and I'm like trained in somatic experiencing through Peter Levine on top of a bunch of energy work that I do. And so much of what you said are things that I say to my clients and things that I say to myself and things that I write about in social media posts and in emails and in blogs. And it's just so beautiful to see other people out there, like in their modalities, doing the same work. And it really is like the human condition is a wild place to be, right? Like as just a human being. And that allowing piece is so huge. And that one is one of the hardest ones, I think, for so many people. The understanding that if they just allow the sensation
Yep.
and don't have to give words to it or give anything to it or shoot it up into their brains, if they just allow that, it is truly a thing that then they will gain the clarity instead of shutting the sensation down to gain the clarity, because we'll never gain clarity if we shut it down. I also love what you said about your daughter. I have a 9-year-old daughter too. And we talk about our big feelings a lot because we both have very big feelings, and allowing kids to just have those big feelings and letting them know that it's okay because, it wasn't, I'm born in 82. So you were talking about being, born in 84, and it really is not a thing. Emotional processing was not a thing that we were allowed to do, or, our parents didn't have that capacity, to teach us those things. And so to be able to do better because we know better with our own children is such a beautiful gift that we can give to ourselves and to them.
Yep. 100%. Yeah.
I
Thank
loved
you.
every bit of it. I would love to connect more with you, Dawn.
Yeah, please. Yes, please. I'd love that.
Well, oh, go ahead, Moshe.
Don, thank you for your presentation. I really enjoyed hearing everything about what you said. And I was curious because you defined emotions as energy in motion. And I was curious if you can tell us the difference between emotions and feelings.
Mm,
If that if that's something that you feel able to talk
yeah.
about.
Yeah. Let me see if I can just decipher that in my brain, or in my heart. Um, I think emotions, so I would say feelings are the sensations that are rising through our system. I would say that emotions is the energy within those sensations that are moving through. That we are, it's so interesting that we are like our processing system in our brain is saying, well, this is rage, this is depression, this is this. So I would say it kind of like that. At least that's how I'm tuning into it as. Um, and just a side note, kind of linked to that is an insight that I had too, and this comes into the non-judgment of the emotions that we experience is that, you know, we have to have a contrast, right? So we to know what is what for our systems to be able to compartmentalize and identify what each thing is. And so to know what a liberated state is, we have to know what a distorted state is. And so there's no judgment to any of it because it's all of benefit. But anyways, that's a side note. Off track a little bit, but that's how I would describe it. I don't know if that resonates with you or if you have a different um, way of of understanding the two. I'd love to hear it if
I
you do.
I think that kind of what you said resonates in that the emotions are kind of more of a fundamental thing that's underneath the feelings. The emotion is like a very almost like a physical thing, like there's no need to assign. It's like there's like seven basic or six basic emotions. It's like happy, sad, f happiness, sadness, fear, anger, um, maybe like a couple of others that are just the
Yeah.
very basic energies that come through. And then the feelings, there's like a zillion feelings that you can have that are more interpretive, I guess. That's kind of the way that I learned it.
Yeah, that's a great way, I think, to describe it. And it's so fascinating that just a nuance and shift in the energy running through can create a totally different definition of that feeling, right?
Hmm.
It's pretty incredible. It reminds me of language. Uh, we have so many types of vocal annotations that come out, vocal sounds that come out, and somehow through that process, we've created all these different languages. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Um, Unrelated question. Are you in an RV?
Am I away?
In an RV?
I am, yeah, I'm in a trailer. Yes.
Me too, actually.
Oh,
That's why I
cool.
asked.
You
Yeah.
know, you can see.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, we're living small right now. And it's so funny because we really needed it. Like, there was something in me that I just needed to like clear from our apartment. We had all this furniture and I've just like sold pretty much everything off. We just have a few boxes of things and it's like a brand new start to life with more intentionality and it feels really nice. Yeah.
Awesome. Are you moving around or just staying?
We're staying. Yeah, we stay on a piece of land and there's other people on the land as well and their own abodes and
Cool.
yeah, we're just here. It's pretty sweet.
Cool.
Yeah. It's so funny.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
What
I
part of the
love it.
country?
Where at? I'm in California in Sebastopol, so it's Sonoma County.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, the
Yeah,
other
where are
side of
you
the
at?
country from me. I'm in Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Right near Atlanta.
Nice. I know a
Yeah,
lot of people there, so it's a great space, great place.
cool. It's nice to meet you, Don.
Nice to meet you as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dawn. We're a little over, so I'll go ahead and cut our recording off. But
Yeah.
if anyone wants to stay on and ask more questions, if Dawn is able to, then feel
Yeah.
free to do that.